Alright, so I love voice actors. I get excited when I see certain voice actors appearing in future games that are coming out. And right here we have Charlie Cox. Not necessarily known as a huge voice actor in the gaming industry, but he did voice Gustav in Clair Obscur Expedition 33. That game that popped off, huge Game of the Year contender. If you don't know Gustav, he's kind of the Robert Pattinson looking guy that you sort of see with most of the marketing material with the game. He voiced Gustav, so he had a pretty huge role in the game. And at this Galaxycon that we're looking at here, he was asked a very specific question from a fan that you could only know if you knew the lore of Expedition 33 and if you'd gotten a fair bit into the game. What Charlie Cox said next revealed that he did not know the lore of the game. He knew really nothing about the game, and even more interestingly, what he said made me think about where I find myself in the gaming space, in the gaming industry. It made me think about the state of games today. Now let me be clear here, Charlie Cox seems like a great guy. I don't hold any of this against him, not that he would care. But it's really what he said. So essentially, I'll play the clip for you too. He said that he didn't know much about Clair Obscur Expedition 33. And he said that games have come a long way since Super Mario 64. Which made me think to myself, is that really true? So that's something I want to explore.
Don't believe there's any.
Here we go. This is the wild, silly part.
Well, thank you. Good question.
Buckle your braces.
What's your name?
Ashton.
Ashton.
How you doing? My question for you is, can Matt Murdock and Esquier be friends?
A fair question.
Esquier. Esquier from Clair Obscur Expedition 33.
Right.
Can those two ever be friends?
He's not sure what to do.
Okay.
This is where he makes the right call. He's honest.
Just preface. Who is Esquier?
Yep.
The big guy.
He made the right
Okay.
call.
I don't know who that is.
Shouldn't have pretended.
So I have to apologize.
It's
For
okay.
those of you who don't know, I was very lucky in that I was asked to do the voice for a computer game.
Gustav.
Yeah, for this game, Expedition 33. So is it
Yes,
called
no,
Expedition
no, no.
33 or is it called Clair Obscur?
You can either call it Clair Obscur
It's
or
the
you just
same
call it-
thing.
Yeah, you can, either one.
Okay, so I was asked to do this game. I'm not a gamer,
There it
so
is.
I haven't played it. I knew nothing about it other than I went into a studio and I did 4 hours probably of voiceover
wanted
for
a
this
paycheck,
character.
yeah.
I remember being in the studio and thinking this is beautiful. Like the visuals are extraordinary. They've come a long way since
Here it is.
Mario 64. Which was probably the last computer game I played.
Called it a computer game.
But yeah, suddenly I'm like, are people?
So yeah, it was awkward, it was weird to watch, it was an interesting enough question to get him to think if he knew who SKA was, but he didn't. It's really what he said at the end though that intrigued me, where he said games have come a long way since Super Mario 64. By the way, if you watched other questions in that Galaxycon, it's clear that this guy's just kind of keeping his head above water in terms of the nerdy questions like, hey, who do you think Matt Murdock would be the coolest character to fight against or fight with? And he's not really sure how to answer. Seems like he doesn't even know any potential heroes or villains that he could list. I get it though. He's a busy guy. Going to these cons must be intimidating because he does not have the time to figure out the lore. He just goes in there to record. I get it. I don't hold it against him. But it is really interesting to see.
Call me crazy, but the first thing I thought of when I heard him say this was Pokémon. I started thinking about my grandparents, or my friends' parents who didn't play games, and started thinking about how they would call Pokemon Pokemans. And then I started thinking about what they would think if they could see 3D Pokemon today. All they remember me doing is having a little plastic Game Boy thing, I don't even know if they knew it was called the Game Boy, and playing with my Pokemans, these little cute drawings on a screen. If they saw 3D Pokemon today, they would say the same thing that Charlie said. They would say, my goodness, games have come a long way, haven't they? that's where it breaks down for me, because as I thought about the Pokemon example, I realized, well, if you've been playing Pokemon, and if you've been up to date on it, if you've been watching my channel also, you know that just because Pokemon has taken that 3D leap, that everything looks cooler now that it's in 3D, that's actually not true. A lot of us would prefer the character and the style of the early 2D games to the 3D kind of bland sprites and lackluster fidelity. It's really not about fidelity for me with Pokemon, it's about the art direction, but still, I think that those games had so much more character, better writing, just interesting lore and worlds. Those games are far better than these better looking games that we see today. You can say the same thing of so many games, but the first thought that popped into my head was Pokemon. I know exactly what Charlie was thinking. He saw Super Mario 64 in his memory. He remembers it didn't look that great when he was playing on his computer. And then he sees Expedition 33, one of the most beautiful games of the year with the most interesting art direction of the year. Yeah, of course he thought that. It makes sense, and I understand. When a lot of people say this, games have come a long way, I feel like they aren't necessarily always gamers. Unless they're specifically talking about fidelity. Then yes, it's hard to argue that, you really can't. But I'm questioning that games have come a long way. I think a lot of us are.
It really made me think of, no offense to Charlie, but it made me think of times like when, let's say, Timothy Chalamet's up there. I've heard that he's sort of a gamer, but not really. Al Pacino, The Rock. These actors come in, Harrison Ford, they come in just to earn their check, and they don't really necessarily understand what they're doing. I can't blame any of them, but it is a little cringe. As gamers, we have to cringe. It's cool too, but it's like, why is Al Pacino coming out here? He does not have any idea what's going on. But it made me think about that. Now, it's important to bring that context and those type of quotes, because I'm sure they all think that when they just see games today, into a realistic fashion where we talk about how games really have not come a long way. Now, this is not because games suck today. I'm not a pessimistic viewer here. It's not because games suck today. It's not because games have gotten worse. It's because games and the foundation of games back with the Nintendo 64, the PS1, SNES, more I'm talking 3D here, I suppose, really were great. They just didn't have the capacity to do what they do now, but those ideas were all there. The loops were all there. The stories were definitely there. Games haven't necessarily gotten better. They've only gotten to a point where now they have the resources to do what the developers always wanted to do. They haven't gotten better. They've only gotten more able. It's sort of like saying, I'm stronger now because you put a 50-pound weight in here for me to curl, when before I only had a 40-pound. I might look stronger now, but that's only because I have the resource to show that and to become even better. But I had my foundations, I had my strength up to where it needed to be. I just didn't have the capacity, and neither did games back then. Now let's do a little comparisons for scientific purposes here. If we're looking at some very recent releases, which I think is important in this context, you have Dragon Age the Veilguard, you have Avowed, you have Assassin's Creed Shadows, Assassin's Creed Valhalla. These games are not great. They are average experiences. They're not bad either. I did not have a bad time playing games that are new. Now let's look at some recent comparisons. Let's look at Dragon Age the Veilguard. Let's look at Avowed. We'll look at Assassin's Creed Valhalla. Some recent games. These games are very adequate. They're very average. They're not great. They're not amazing. But you know what's interesting about it? All of those games, I know Avowed is its own thing, but if we take it back to Pillars of Eternity, kind of where Avowed came from, all three of these games have games prior to them that were developed by the same developers that are actually great games. We're talking Dragon Age Origins. We're talking the Pillars of Eternity. 2, really. And then we're talking whichever one you want to go with. Assassin's Creed Origins, Assassin's Creed 2, Assassin's Creed 4. Those are still really fun, great games that hold up to this day. But you can tell those modern games already do not. But if you look at them side by side, Dragon Age Origins looks really silly. And Dragon Age the Veilguard is actually a fun, weirdly artistic game. The art direction's strange in that game, but it still looks way better, and if you looked at them side by side, you would play Dragon Age the Veilguard. If you were just your average person. That's just what you'd choose. And I get it. Let's take it back even further. Metal Gear Solid, the first game, is not a good looking game. For PS1 standards, sure, it's fine. But it does not hold up well at all today. The controls are still clunky. But guess what? That sucker told a good story. It was so interesting to play through. Resident Evil 1 as well. The clunk made it part of what it was. I, myself, would so much rather play Resident Evil 1 than so many other games out there. The Resident Evil series itself has held up pretty well, I will say. But then you think about Majora's Mask. I'd rather play that over some of the more recent Zelda games, and I really like all of them, but that game holds up to this day. It's all about the art direction, but if you look side by side with graphics, nope, nada. Everyone would choose, let's say, Skyward Sword. Final Fantasy VII. I much prefer the original Final Fantasy VII. But if you look at that versus remake, whoa! Everybody's choosing remake, man. And I get why. The game's stunning. They've reimagined the characters in a beautiful, really cool way. But it does not have the gameplay, it does not have the impact, it's way too silly at times. It doesn't match the tone of the original game. None of these games are better than what came before them. In fact, a lot of them are worse. Let's say early World of Warcraft too. That's a pretty darn classic example. Literally, classic. You could just go on and on. There are many examples of this, and there are many examples that swing in the opposite direction. I would much rather play DK Bonanza over DK 64. And if you looked at them both, you would choose that immediately with just the graphics. So that lines up. Same thing with Mario Odyssey. I'd much rather play that over Mario 64. That's a personal opinion. I know that not everyone would agree with that one. But even say Mario Odyssey and Mario Sunshine. The examples are endless for each side, really. When you think about this, what it comes down to is preference. And what that does is essentially annihilate the environment, annihilate the argument where games are better than they have ever been. It's just not true. Again, I will not argue that games are worse either. We have games like Elden Ring coming out, Baldur's Gate 3. There are so many games. I could just keep going on and on. I'm forgetting some right now. Sekiro's a newer game. We have some amazing games coming out. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom. These games are all setting new standards that we never thought could be reached. That even some of those early games never could have quite imagined. And that's important to note too, because some games are getting better. But when you look at the overall trend, you have games like Live Service, which we never used to have to talk about or even think about. The Stop Killing Games initiative and everything that comes with that. 25 years ago, we never would have imagined. We would have lost access to a game because they, meaning EA, the publisher, would shut down the servers, and that would mean we could never play it again, even though we'd bought the game. We never would have imagined that. But that's the reality of today. That's the reality we're facing. So it's hard to say games are better today than they were back in the day. Another trend that just does not lead itself to games being better is this priority for fidelity. Priority for ultimate beauty that a lot of publishers and developers are going for. Primarily Sony. I mean, what have we gotten out of Sony? What are they doing, man? Because they're trying to prioritize big budget, beautiful games. And it hasn't been paying off. As a few examples, if you look at a game like Jedi Fallen Order, launches completely broken because they're trying to prioritize, I don't even know, but it's just they're not prioritizing the right things. They're not doing the right checks and balances. And is it because they can get away with it? What's going on? We didn't have games like Concord releasing back in the day. We didn't have Suicide Squads out there. We didn't have a Cyberpunk 2077 launch. That's something we never would have had to dream about because games were optimized. They couldn't be saved back in the day. If you launched a game that was awful, that was it. Word of mouth, you're done for. AC Unity, look what happened. There's a fun game buried beneath all these messes, but it's something we're seeing far too often now. And that's something we never had to deal with either. Now, so far I've given my counterpoints, of course, going strong on those, but like I said, I don't want to discount everything good that's come out either. I'm loving Donkey Kong Bonanza. It's awesome that a game like this can come out and still be great. There's so many examples of this. I listed Baldur's Gate 3. I really want to play the Kingdom Come Deliverance games. I've heard great things about those. It's cool that those games are being supported and will continue to grow because those are a unique game. You could just go on and on about the good games that are coming too. I think it's important we aren't too negative in this space either. When it comes to the live service stuff, be as negative as you want, I say. But to answer it all, are games better than they used to be? The answer's no. It's split, which means the answer can't be yes. Some series have continued to evolve, but are games overall better? No. There's a part of me that wants to say they're worse. There's a part of me that wants to say, when we started to get into the PlayStation 3 era, there was a lot of character lost. There was some charm, some character. Once we left the GameCube behind and went into the Wii, the PlayStation 3, something changed. Something changed. I don't know what it is. It pops up again once in a while in a game like Astrobot or like DK Bonanza like I'm playing right now. There's a ton of charm in that game. These games pop up once in a while, but they're not that common anymore. I'm inclined to say they have gotten a little worse. But there's always time to turn it around, and it's one of the reasons why I like Nintendo. Because they preserve that charm better than everyone. Anyways, thanks for watching. Let me know what you think about this. See ya.